Barrickman.
Welcome to another Glasgow Wants to Know. Our program tonight is going to deal with the Glasgow Renaissance Main Street project. To tell us all about it, we have Rhonda Trautman, who, as some of you know and some don't, is the daughter of the late Judge Shelley Ryherd. She had been away for quite a while, and I imagine that people have forgotten about her background, and especially more recent background. So we'll cover that first.
Oh, okay. Well, as you know, I grew up here and have been kind of a lifelong Glasgow person. Although I've lived away for 25 years, I always felt like this was home and in my heart. So we recently moved here after being gone for 25 years and have settled in. My husband Craig and my two kids, Shelley and Matthew, and we're just happy to be back in the community and getting involved with various projects and sports and all that. What brought us back here is what we're enjoying right now. We were missing kind of the small town where we were. We were most recently living in Tucson, Arizona. I was at the University of Arizona there on the faculty, and although it's wonderful out there, we liked it, but I kept telling my husband we really need to move back to a small town where the kids can grow up and have that same, I think, feeling that I did and growing up here. So we're just happy to be back.
And as a faculty member at the university, what was your field?
Yeah. Well, I after a number of years after graduating from Glasgow High School, I went to UK, and I had a degree as a medical technologist as an undergraduate, and I worked at the Veterans Administration Hospital there in Lexington for approximately 8 years, and then after a while decided to go back and really kind of switch careers. I got a master's of public administration from the University of Kentucky at their Martin School of Public Administration, and then after receiving my master's I continued on and graduated with my PhD in public financial management from the University of Kentucky in 1991. After 1991 is when I took the faculty position in Arizona. I was assistant director of their School of Public Administration there for approximately 5 years, and then recently, in 1998, moved back here. I'm also on the faculty now at the University of Kentucky at the Martin School, so I've been full circle. I left there 10 years ago, and now I'm back teaching there. I do that 1 day a week, travel up to Lexington, teach my class, and I also have every semester I have a class on the internet, and so I'm able to be here in Glasgow and teach my class from here.
Well, you are a busy lady.
Yeah, yeah, I certainly am.
But you've well answered questions I've had.
Mm-hmm.
What qualifications does she have for the position which she is now holding as a director?
Right.
Because, as you say, you've been gone for 25 years, and obviously the public hasn't kept up with you.
Right. Well, when I moved back, one of my goals, because I have children and my husband's not from this area, we were interested in finding ways of getting involved with the community fairly quickly, and I started my initial interest with the Renaissance program was I served as a committee member on one of their first committees, and I started helping with the Economic Development Committee because of my background and my experience with doing economic analysis and economic development studies. I, along with, in particular, Mr. James, Bill James, who's just recently moved, we did the market study that we needed to do as part of our Renaissance application. And so I got quickly entrenched into the community by doing that. And when we progressed a little bit farther in the program, one of the requirements is to have a director. And because we received what's called silver status recognition, it needed to be, as a requirement, you had to have a full-time manager of the program. So because I was already working pretty heavily in it anyway, I thought, well, this might be something I'd be interested in doing if we could work it around my schedule at the university, because that was my first commitment. And so I was happy that they were willing to work around that, and I took the position at the 1st of March, and it's been kind of full steam ahead since then. But we've got a lot of projects going, and I've got a really wonderful group of people I'm working with as volunteers on the steering committee and the various subcommittees that we have. And so my job is really just to facilitate a lot of what they're thinking and their ideas, and help kind of bring all those projects together.
How is your position funded?
Well, the program, Renaissance Kentucky, offers to classified cities some salary support directly for this. So, for example, my position is funded, 50% of it is funded by the state, and 50% of it is funded by the city. So they have matched it, and that is a 2-year commitment. So I'm not even into my first full year. In order to advance, for example, for the city of Glasgow to advance to gold status, they do have to have a full-time manager, and it is literally a full-time job. I'm very busy now. A lot of things are happening and coordinating, and committees, and I travel to Frankfurt quite often to meet with people about various projects or applications that we have in, and it's definitely a full-time job, but it is a benefit the way the program is set up for, in particular, very small communities across the state that have really no funding. They do get some of this assistance from the state in order to help hire even a part-time. Some cities have part-time managers, and that helps them at least get the paperwork together so that they can apply to move up the tier in this bronze, silver, gold kind of hierarchy. And it's kind of a chicken or an egg type of situation. In order to advance, you have to have certain things going on, and in order to have those going on, you have to have somebody to help do that. And so luckily, Glasgow was fortunate enough to have a lot of wonderful volunteers to step up at the beginning, get all of that organized so that we were classified immediately as a silver city. And then all they had to do is then hire me, or someone, they did hire me to help implement what they had already done.
Well, now, how do you advance to a gold city?
Okay, there are a number of criteria that you have to have. For example, in order for us to be recognized as a silver city to begin with, we had to show that, number one, we had formal committees organized that were working on various projects, that we had a master plan and a set of goals. Now, those goals were identified back 2 years ago at the original public hearing. We had a large public hearing, and people from the community came in and said they'd really like to see this or that, and so that planning helped develop certain project ideas. All of that was put together with a lot of economic analysis and kind of a needs assessment into a large application that went to the state. They recognized us as as a silver city. In order for us to proceed to the next level, they really want to see at least one of our major projects in some fairly advanced state of completion. And then there's a couple of other things that we'll have to do in order to get to that. One in particular is the establishment of a historic ordinance, local ordinance, that has some sort of local ideas about how to use historic properties. So that's a criteria that you have to have in place in order to get to the gold status.
Now, if you get to the gold status, do you have a 2 extra years, or?
Correct. So we have a number of years that we have available to us to receive, in fact, 5 years. You can remain 5 years as a silver city. Once you go to the gold status, there's, I believe, another 5 years in theory that you can receive funding. But, you know, the issue is this is a program that was created in 1996 by Governor Patton, and it is a Patton project. So, you know, everyone's hoping that the program itself will live well beyond once he goes out of office, that whether it's Renaissance or something similar, that it'll still be in existence to help fund local projects such as the ones we have on. There's currently 72 communities across the city that are receiving some sort of Renaissance funding.
I gather from what you say that it's strictly state funding and no federal funding.
Well, we do receive, there is, the way this is set up is called the Renaissance Alliance, and the Alliance is made up of a number of agencies that have various sorts of funding that comes together with this, in this alliance. And so as we apply, we're going for the package where we don't have to go directly to each agency. They bring it in and we can apply for it at one spot. It is federal, some federal, what's traditionally referred to as ICE-T money, transportation money that comes to the state from the federal government. And then that is provided to the local communities by the state through this Renaissance Alliance. Also, housing urban development programs that are being used for renovation of historic houses or upgrading affordable rental properties, that sort of thing. That's also a federal project money that's coming through the state, goes into this Renaissance potential pool of money that we can then apply for.
Other than a partial funding to your position, does the city contribute any other funds?
They contribute office space, a lot of in-kind services. I have a nice big office in City Hall that's being provided by the city. Originally, well, just helping get that set up as far as you know, basic supplies and that sort of thing. They contributed a lot of that. I play kind of a liaison role, really. I work real closely with Mayor Honeycutt on things. I report to the steering committee, for example, on projects, but I'm trying in my role to facilitate a lot of things that the city might need and that they might not be able to do, for example, directly, but we could do it through the Renaissance program. So luckily, the council and the mayor have been just very, very supportive of the things that have come through Renaissance as recommendations. They provide, the other thing is they provide the legitimate point for all of my accounting, my record keeping. They provide all that for me.
Now, insofar as Glasgow is concerned, what is the purpose of Renaissance Main Street?
As far as Glasgow, we are basing our program and our ideas off of models that have been developed in a lot of different communities. The Renaissance philosophy mimics very closely this Main Street philosophy. It's two separate programs. And to understand what we're doing locally, it's really important to understand what these two programs are and how they're different. For example, the National Main Street Office is a program that is run at out of Washington, and it's with the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Their main focus is to provide technical assistance and training and education to local communities to learn how to reuse historic spaces, renovate, preserve, maintain, and revitalize downtown areas. They do not, however, provide a lot of direct funding. They provide technical assistance. The Renaissance Kentucky program is kind of the fuel for that. They have the money. So what Glasgow has done is taken these two programs, put them together in one office, and what we're trying to do is use the philosophy that is developed by the Main Street program and use the funding that's available through Renaissance to carry out very specific projects that we have identified to revitalize our downtown. Now, the main misconception that I hear about Renaissance is people seem to think it's only related to the square and around the square. And it is actually a very large area has been defined to be included in the Renaissance area. It's approximately 54 square blocks of downtown.
You anticipated my next question.
Oh, really?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's 54 square blocks, and that includes a lot of both residential, commercial, industrial spaces. So what we're trying to do is use this philosophy of how can we best utilize what we have in downtown, and how can we promote downtown to become a stronger marketplace, a place where people want to come and visit and hang out, eat, shop, that sort of thing. So that's one of the main questions I answer is, you know, people seem to think because it's called Main Street that it's just the square, but it's really not. It's a large area. But the philosophy, there's a kind of a 4-point philosophy that Main Street uses. One is called design, and that is focusing on preservation of historic or prominent features of your community. One is called promotion, meaning learning how to develop programs to promote the downtown, to get more shopping and that sort of thing into the downtown. There's another point referred to as economic restructuring, and that's one thing that's very important, because what we recognize in most of the communities across the state and across the country, as a matter of fact, are recognizing now is that the downtowns of long ago we're not like we used to be. People shop different places. They shop at the Walmarts and the Kmarts and the strip malls and everything, and the downtowns can't compete with that, but the downtowns can be something different that will attract people for a different reason. So that's the idea of this economic restructuring, is trying to consider what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and develop a marketing plan that will help attract that type of business into your downtown.
I understand that you have a steering committee
Right.
that selects the projects and in one sense oversees the project, and I understand that Judge Dickinson is the chairman
Right.
of that committee. Now, what projects have been selected already?
Okay. Our main project, and it's referred to as our major revitalization project, is the Liberty Street School campus. And that was identified in a public hearing a couple of years ago in our first meeting to identify the major goals of what people would want to see, what project would have a big impact on the downtown. Well, the idea that Western is moving out of those buildings, those were going to be vacant. People were concerned that those buildings would deteriorate, be vandalized, torn down, whatever. So the idea was to come up with some kind of projects that would save that campus and make it useful again. So as part of our annual kind of program, we submitted an application to the Renaissance Kentucky program asking for money to fund that project. And it was referred to as our major revitalization project. We fortunately received $250,000 from the state to start and get that underway. There's been a lot, of course, in the newspaper, on the radio about this project, but it's really kind of a 3-stage thing that we're doing up there. One of the goals of the Renaissance was to find some use for what's referred to as the old high school building. feasible. And number two, we had several developers that were interested in doing that with us. So we have selected a developer partnership, I guess you could say. It's AU Associates in conjunction with Gray Construction.
What is AU Associates?
They're a build design company out of Lexington that has done a lot of historic property renovations. And so they, the owner, director, I guess, of that company, Heidi Wiedemann, she is an expert in historic preservation projects, which is something that a lot of just general contractors don't have the expertise on. They don't know how to go in and fit an old building into something else without destroying the historic integrity. So she, and in partnership with Gray Construction as the general contractor, have taken that building on as a private development project. And what that means is that the city is in effect turning that building over to them, and they will build, design, and ultimately manage the apartments. And the apartments are targeted for independent seniors.
You mean by turning it over to them that it has to be conveyed to them?
Right. They are actually
by deed?
Right. They are actually purchasing that building and just the immediate footprint around that building and the required parking. That will be managed by the management company that specializes in this type of apartment living, and that will be within the scope of the rest of the Liberty Street campus, will be privately owned. The other two buildings are going to be converted into public spaces that will continue to be owned by the city. And we have...
Really, I'm relying on my recollection now. The city doesn't own it.
Right.
The Industrial Commission
right. IDEA owns it. Well, IDEA what has been wonderful about this. They are interested in seeing it just like everyone else used. They don't have a specific purpose for it themselves, so they have agreed in this whole process, they are turning it back over to the city as the owner, and the owner then will be ultimately the city of Glasgow, of the entire campus. The city of Glasgow is then entering into this contract with this private developer who will take over the one building. The other two buildings, the main two buildings, and the rest of the campus will still be owned by the city.
Well, so far, do you have any plans for those two buildings?
Right. The middle building up there, which is referred to as the music hall building, which is in the middle, that are familiar with the Park and Rec department now, you know, they are right there on the square, but their building is not handicap accessible. They are not in compliance right now with ADA requirements. And the layout of the building, it just doesn't really suit them as well as it could be. So we have looked at moving their offices to that building, and they then ultimately will be there to manage, oversee the two gymnasiums that are on the property. The old gym that's attached, they use that already for some of their recreational facility, the Little League basketball, recreation basketball, that sort of thing. And then the newer gym, which is in the rear of the property, that's where they do a lot of their senior aerobic programs, walking programs, and that sort of thing. So we think when you look at the whole property, that makes a whole lot of sense, because we will have seniors in the apartments that will be within, 400 feet of the recreation facilities that they use already. So those two go together very well.
Now the old elementary building.
Right.
What?
The old elementary building is the one in Western has added an amazing amount of technology upgrades up there. They have a computer rooms, and they have the internet, the ITV teleconferencing room where they do distance learning classes and everything. And a lot of their upgrades to that makes that whole facility just a lot better. It's been maintained a lot better than the other two buildings, probably in the long run. We do not have specific plans for that. We have made that building available, for example, to the library board to consider, because we know that they're in the middle of a decision of what to do. We did fund a feasibility study. The Renaissance program funded a feasibility study for the library board to take a look at what they need to do at the library. They are under capacity there. There's not a whole lot of space to expand in their existing facility at all. So they're looking at what options they have, and the steering committee of the Renaissance is just saying this building's available for you to take a look at as you make your decision. So we haven't gone a long way to get anything else into that. We're just kind of holding off, waiting to see what the consensus of that kind of outcome would be with the library. If they choose to take a look at it, we will, be happy to facilitate plans to modify the building, upgrade it where it's necessary, but we're just kind of waiting on that one. That's kind of phase 3 of the whole campus. Because it is in such nice shape, we could literally, when Western moves out, we could move in there and use it as a community center as is right now, without a lot of upgrades.
Now, insofar, let's go back to remodeling the old high school building for apartments, and by the AU organization. Does the AU organization then, after they get possession of it and get title to it, do they fund the...
Right.
They do the funding, and they will own it, if I understood you correctly, and then they will administer it.
Right. Because it's a private development, the benefit to doing this type of project as a private development is that private developers can access some sorts of funding that a nonprofit or a government entity can't. For example, because that building is historic, it qualifies for historic tax credits. Because they are also looking to put housing in there, the housing and urban development offers what's called housing tax credits or housing credits. And those credits make the project feasible from a standpoint that those tax credits are in essence like for example, if they get $200,000 worth of tax credits, they then take those credits to an investor who might need to purchase a tax credit, and that's an easy way for them to raise some capital for a project, and it doesn't cost them anything. A government can't get into that program. We couldn't, if the city of Glasgow wanted to develop those apartments themselves, we wouldn't benefit from that type of incentive.
Now, would it be fair for me to say that the $250,000 grant is for planning only?
Well, it's for as far as we can stretch it. And believe me, I'm very tight with my grant money, but we're trying to get a lot of local people in to help us with some of the, for example, some of the planning, the construction plans, that sort of thing. We've contracted with a local designer, for example, that is helping us with an entire site plan for the 8.5 acres to see how.
I mean, that grant money would not be used, for instance, to remodel the middle building up there.
If we have money, the $250,000 will be used only on the middle building and or the old grade school building. We will not be putting a dime into the apartments out of our grant.
Okay.
That will be all the private development. Once it's turned over to them, it will not cost the city anything. In fact, they're paying us for a they're paying us some for the purchase of the property, which we can then turn around and put back into the other two buildings. So it's a way to leverage the amount of money that we got in the grant, because it made our whole application, for example, much more attractive to the state for us to say, well, we're going to spend money on these two buildings, and by doing that, it makes this third building much more attractive for private development. Because, you know, to be honest, if we weren't going to do anything with those two other buildings, just let them sit there and fall down, very few developers would want to come in and put the money into an apartment complex. So we feel like we've leveraged a great deal for the community by setting it up this way.
Has there been any contracts let or anything like that insofar as the middle building is concerned and the old elementary building? And actually, I guess the first question should be, has the conveyance been made from the idea board to the city, and then the city to the AU organization?
No, we are in the process right now of getting the conveyance of the property from idea to the city. We also have received the option agreement. It hasn't been executed or even signed and delivered yet for the purchase of the property. All of the purchase of this property from the for the apartments will be contingent on their application for the tax credits being approved. So none of that will go forward until probably the end of November. We will know, for example, whether their application for all of this funding is going to go through. Then they can exercise the option to purchase. We haven't done any, other than some just asbestos analysis, abatement, no abatement, but just getting some asbestos studies done, a preliminary site plan done. We haven't put out any bids for contract improvements yet, but we are trying to get some plans drawn up to show what we do need to do, but none of the construction contracts have been put out yet.
Now let's go to another project. Which one would you like to discuss next?
Well, we have a number of projects.
Yeah, I know. I hope to cover at least slightly all of them.
Well, the interesting thing, during the whole time where we found out we had been awarded the $250,000 for the Liberty Street campus, that was our main project, then the mayor and city council was able to then secure purchase of the plaza, which has been very exciting for everyone. Now, technically, that has not been brought formally to the Renaissance as a project yet. We don't identify that as one of our projects, although we are helping the mayor with some of the work, getting it, some preliminary work done on it. Eventually, we hope to help facilitate with a fundraising campaign, and when and if construction renovation begins, we will help facilitate
done by the city.
Right. We're doing that. He's doing that independently through the city because they own the property. But what we're trying to do then, at some point, our steering committee and this new subcommittee that we're going to be creating will help facilitate the mayor with implementation of some of the renovation, and in particular with a local fundraising. I will also be helping write some grants through the Heritage Council and that sort of thing, that's going to try to fill in the funding with some historic preservation grants. So I'll be doing that.
Well, now, while we're on Main Street, let's move on down to the Delvaux Greer property.
Well, that's another interesting project that kind of materialized just by some people sitting around talking about, well, this is interesting house. It's actually one of the most historic houses we have within the downtown area. I did a lot of research on it. So what I just kicked around the idea of what could we do to help preserve that. Well, as many people might know, A.F. Crow Funeral Home purchased the house and the immediate property because they were needing some additional parking. And so some of the steering committee members and myself started talking with Follis Crow and seeing what we could do, because he wasn't particularly interested in renovating the house himself, but he didn't want to see it torn down either. So there is a way for that type of property, in essence, to be donated, so that the donation benefits the owner, plus the city would then have the benefit of using that as public office space or whatever once it's renovated. So that's where we are at that point. I did write a small grant request, submitted it to the state historical, well, it's the Heritage Council, because they had a very small pot of money that they were awarding for what they call stabilization emergencies. And as many of you people drive by there, it is in fairly bad shape in certain places, some of the brick falling off and that kind of thing. And I was happy to find out that they received 45 applications for that grant, and they gave 3 out across the state, and they awarded us some of the money to help stabilize and preserve that house. So we are in the process now still of meeting with Follis to work out the paperwork so that that house can be turned over, in essence, as a Renaissance project to work on and preserve and get it renovated for some sort of use.
And the grant for that is in addition to the $265,000
right.
grant.
Mm-hmm. And in addition, we also got a third grant, $95,000 grant, which was referred to as the direct appropriation. And it's really on the line of the old kind of revenue sharing type of money, where we submitted several projects, small projects that we had in mind, and we were awarded $95,000 to divide up among the various projects that we had in mind. One of them, for example, part of that money went to help fund the feasibility study for the library, for example. We are funding a booklet which is called Guide to Downtown Improvements, and it has criteria of how to renovate, for example, an exterior of a historic building, kind of not do's and don'ts, but we recommend, we don't recommend certain things. And so we've got that book that's going to be coming out. They'll be available to local people who want the benefit of that type of advice. We've also funded a, let me think, what are the other projects out of that one? Additional streetscaping that will be put in the probably the next year or so around the square, some additional improvements there. So we've got, luckily enough, since I've been in this position, we have identified 3 grants. We've gone after 3 grants, and we've been awarded money on all 3 of them. So we've been very lucky.
These latter grants, are they state or federal?
These are all through the Renaissance. This is a direct appropriation from the state.
From the state.
Right. And the only criteria they have on that is they had to just review the list of projects that we included to use this money on. How we used it really within that category, they didn't really have that much to say about it. They just said, well, this project meets the Renaissance criteria, so it's okay. Luckily, that money just became available. We're already spending some of it, and it's a reimbursement schedule. So what we have to do is we spend the money, then I submit the invoices, and then the state sends us the money back. So it's a nice nice program, because that's $95,000 that we're using for a variety of smaller projects.
Well, are you going to be able, with the grant, are you going to be able to actually restore the Delvaux property?
Well, the money that we received will go, number one, to get the exterior work done, get it stabilized, remove some of the not historic addition that's on the back. For example, there's an addition that was stuck on a porch and some things that were added on, get that taken off. I have had several people within the community tell me that if we were able to get a grant, that they would like to then contribute to it kind of as a match. So there's some local citizens here that have already come forward and want to donate money specifically for that project. And we also have one of our other projects that we set, or activities that we set up with some of this direct appropriation money, is what we're calling exterior improvement program. And so we do have some money there that we might be able to tap into to help get the exterior, and if any money's left over, work on initial interior renovations. There's a major cleanup there. We've got to do a lot of cleaning.
That's what I was
I don't know if anybody's been in it, but it's an interesting house. I've taken two architects, historical architects in there, and they think it's one of the more fascinating houses they've been in, because it's not an original. The structure actually was a smaller scale structure, and it received some addition over various periods, and they think it's interesting because it's kind of like a time capsule for some mid-1800 kind of renovations as you go through it, and it takes someone with their kind of background to be able to point out the subtle differences within that house. But it's going to make a nice space for, say, receptions or community meetings or something, that if we could eventually fix it up, or maybe some office space that somebody might be lucky enough to be in there.
I would think, based on partial knowledge on my part, that it's going to cost considerably to renovate the interior of that house.
It's it's a sound structure. That's the nice part of it. It's got a beautiful old staircase, and it is not. Once we can get it cleaned out, it'll be a little bit easier to assess what's going to have to be done. Obviously, electric and plumbing and heating and cooling, those are always your major three things. But it does have a fairly new roof on it, and so it's not in really poor structural condition. It is in a lot of the detail and the exterior, some of the mason work and that kind of thing needs some major work.
When I first came to Barron County, the county attorney, Paul Greer, lived there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the house then, and of course it was beautiful at that time, because he and Mrs. Greer took care of the interior.
Right. If anyone does have, what we don't have is any interior pictures of the house, which would be interesting if someone out there in the community did happen to remember they had ever been in the house, or would like to, once we get going, provide us some advice of what it did look like originally, or what the rooms were particularly used for. It would be interesting to know, because obviously the walls, there's places where it's the walls are coming down, and the nice hardwood floors are there though, and a lot of it's still there, but it's just
has to be refurbished.
Right, refurbished and cleaned.
Yeah, well, yeah. You are correct in emphasizing that on two different occasions here now. Yeah, it really needs to be cleaned. The street project that is about rerouting traffic around the square. Who's investigating that? I mean, have you got a committee that does that?
Right,
or
that was
is it the whole steering committee, or?
Well, we didn't, that's the idea to do some work on the square with the addition of two new islands and that sort of thing. That was actually in done earlier by some traffic study that was commissioned. And those were recommendations that came out of this traffic study. Now, I'm not sure who originally commissioned that, but the recommendations came forward and the idea that they were going to need some new islands and within those some plantings and streetscape kind of thing. That's where we came on and said we would provide some money to help decorate, I guess, the islands with, just as similar to the one we already have, where we have some shrubbery and that sort of thing. But from what I understand, that was a traffic study done earlier and not really part of the Renaissance. But we just came in and said, given that you need to do this, we will assist with this project by doing some streetscape.
I presume you have then seen the original diagram for the traffic islands that's been proposed. Where are they going?
Well, the one will be at the corner of coming up Ray Street as you enter the square there. A raised one will be on that corner. There'll be one on the south side corner by Washington. Those will be very similar to the ones there in front of, for example, in front of George J's now there on the corner. There's going to be a fourth one, technically an island, but it's not going to be the raised version. It'll just be painted because of the truck traffic turning the corner there by turning to go out Main Street. The trucks have to swerve out sometimes to make that corner, and so because of that, they're not putting a raised one in. But it will be very similar on the other two corners to what is currently in front of the George J. Ellis building. And the reason for these, from what I understand, is to more clearly define the circle lane versus the straight through lanes. And we're hoping, based on their recommendations, that this will help facilitate some of the traffic flow. And I don't have all the specifications on that, but I know that there's, on one of the corners coming up Main, for example, in front of the plaza onto the square, there's going to be some change there with maybe an additional a stop sign, not a light, but a stop sign, so that traffic doesn't shoot down over the hill there, which is a problem coming up onto the square. Traffic's not stopping now. So that's a little bit kind of just a brief description. The other thing that we have looked into is adding some additional signage at the crosswalks. Where we have crosswalks now, they're not for people that have always lived here. They're fairly obvious. Everybody knows there's a crosswalk there. But for people that aren't, it's really hard to tell that there is a crosswalk. So we're looking at ways to make those a little more visible with some signage or something. So that's also part of what we've agreed to help with.
Well, now there's been some talk apparently of changing the flow of the traffic. You know anything about that?
I know at one point there was a study looking at making the Main Street corridor there two-way, so you could go both ways. But that's not what's being done now. That's not, as far as I understand, that was not recommended. But it was investigated, I guess, as far as making that a two-way street where there's just a loop around the other part. But as far as I know, the recommendations for these islands are totally separate from that, and there's not going to be any two-way traffic created at all.
Any other projects?
Well, I did briefly mention our exterior improvement program. Our exterior improvement program is money that we received as a grant, part of our $95,000 grant, and then the city council and the mayor were generous enough to match that amount of money that we set aside to create a total of approximately $200,000 in a fund that we have available to literally give to property owners, in particular business owners or income producing properties, for exterior improvements to their buildings. So business owners, for example, can apply for up to $10,000 to be used on improvements. And when we say exterior, that could mean the rear of your property if it's visible from the street or from passerby traffic. This $10,000, if you're approved for the maximum, 75% of that, or $7,500, is a no interest loan that doesn't have to be paid back for 5 years. The balance, the $2,500, is a outright grant. So we're giving away 25% of each of these awards. And we're doing this in hopes that if a project, for example, is going to cost someone, say, $20,000, we will help cover part of it, and then we're stimulating some more spending by the business owner. So it's a leverage kind of way to get more improvements to the downtown area on the facades. This will even include a roof repair if it's part of a bigger project, such as a facade improvement. So we do have those applications. If anyone's interested, they can contact my office. It's a very simple 2-page form, very simple. What the committee wants to hear about in the application is, this is the problem, this is what we would like to do to make improvements. If you have like a picture of some example of what you would want to do, you include that. That goes to application goes to a small subcommittee, which is made up of 3 people. They review it, and then we would then, if it's approved, it's a reimbursement scheme. So you pay, you hire your contractor, they come in, you spend $6,000. If you were approved for that amount, we reimburse you that amount. 25% being a free and clear grant.
Now I'm going to ask you a question that may cause you trouble.
Oh.
Who determines whether it's approved?
Okay. Well, we have very specific criteria that we are following. For historic properties, we will have to, because some of this money is state money, and they
now
give
who's we? Is that going to be you alone that's finally going to decide?
No, it's a subcommittee made up of 1 representative from the steering committee, 1 council member, and the mayor are on this committee. They review the applications, then recommend it out to the steering committee. The steering committee will then be the one who tells me, yes, this has been approved, and when they submit, you can reimburse them. That's the way it goes. I'm just the facilitator. I don't approve any of it. I don't have anything to do with the approval process. I'm just there to facilitate paying out and documenting all of the loans and that sort of thing. That we have criteria that we are using, and in a historic property, we will be required to adhere to historic renovation criteria that's set by the state. And those are fairly well established. For example, if you have a historic facade on your building, you have a certain style front, you have certain style windows. What we don't allow is for example, on a renovation, you couldn't take those windows out, put a totally different style of window in it, because that would change the historic integrity of the property. So I have all that information. If people have questions, I can give them information on what would be approved and not approved, and what would be allowed under this program. But this doesn't just apply to historic properties. It's any property.
My next question.
Yeah. No, it's any properties, but because the steering committee has received some of this money from the state, and it's in this one pool, if it's a historic property, the guidelines will be a little bit more strict, but we still, we would like to, you adhere to certain standard colors or that sort of thing, and that's about as basic as it gets. But the committee is, we're wanting to get the money out there. We've received I think 4 applications. Those are being reviewed right now. And we have been actually held up until just the last couple of weeks to get the grant agreement in place with the state. We couldn't actually approve anything until just a couple of weeks ago because of the paperwork. So we did get that finally finalized, and we're ready to start giving this money out. And we've got, you know, we're ready and willing for people to come by and ask us questions, and I'll be happy to go by and see the property and help answer any questions. We can also refer them to people in Frankfort if they might have questions about a historic property. That's kind of what I'm there for, is to help them facilitate any renovation questions that they might have.
Now, obviously this would apply to businesses on the square. How far out does it extend?
It extends to businesses and what we're calling income producing properties within this 54 block area. I do have a map I can provide to anyone, but just in general, say for example, if you start the boundary at, say, Cherry and North Race, it includes out that far, all the way around to an area that includes, for example, the cemetery up that way. If you're going around the scope of the town, the old fort is in this area. Continues on around Sunset to South Green, across includes the Bunch area, Bunch School, back around Franklin up and over to, I think, Cherry, kind of coming back around that way. So that's kind of the scope of where we're talking about. It's a large area, and any property owner in that would qualify, and we'd be happy to review an application. If they have any questions, they can contact me.
Well, generally, if I understand you, as far as Main Street's concerned, west, it extends all the way out to the bypass.
No, it kind of, as it comes across, let me think, where it's, the boundary is not real regular on that side of town. It goes around to, for example, about where the animal clinic cuts across that way, circles back up, and includes then the cemetery from that point around and then back. It doesn't go out to the bypass. But it's a very irregular boundary on that side of town. It's kind of hard to explain without seeing a map. But I have a map, and I'd be happy to send it to anybody that wants to look just to see if they are in the area.
You say you've already had, what, 4 applications?
I think most recently I heard we had 4 applications.
And if I understood you, it doesn't have to be renovation on the front. It is any part of the building that can be seen by the public,
right,
using public transportation.
Right. Or walking by or whatever from the rear of the property. Also, as I said, a roof project, it's not designed to just do roofs, but if you want to make, like, put new windows in or something and improve a roof, it will be included. But we want it to be more than just a roof project. So it has to be something and a roof. So if you need work on a door, new door, even paint, signage, new signs on the front of a building, it's all included. And I've got a list of projects in particular that would qualify if people want to find out. But it's as simple as even if you needed just new paint or some new landscaping, that sort of thing.
But it must improve the looks.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
That's the main criteria.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's called Exterior Improvement Program. That's the name of it. So we're here to, you know, get people to just think about how they can make some improvements. They might need a new doorway, a rear entrance that make it easier to get into the building from a parking standpoint, that sort of thing. Anything that will improve not only appearance but accessibility to the building.
We're about out of time.
Oh.
I want to thank you for coming. I at least, I don't know about the public generally, but I at least now understand and know a whole lot more about the program thanks to you than I did.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. It is a kind of a complicated program, and That's part of what I'm here to do, is just to let people know what we're doing, what the steering committee's doing, how they might get involved. We're always looking for new volunteers. If you want to get on a committee, we're more than welcome to have you.
I've been having people ask me questions about it. I think you've answered most of them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.